Welcome back into the Pig Trail Show. It's Sunday, which means another Hog Hoops Report with Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. And Kevin, we came on here 2 weeks ago and you said we need action. You made a call to action for the Arkansas staff. And since the Razorbacks, they've delivered. Two more commitments this week for Arkansas in the form of Jonas Adu and John L. Davis. Not just run-of-the-mill transfer portal additions, Kevin. Coach Cal, we knew this would happen, but he's cooking and he's cooking with gas right now.
He scaled to the mountaintop once again in recruiting. I mean, I think he lives up there. He's not scaling anymore. He's just there.
He's got a house up there.
Yeah, I'm calling for action a couple of weeks ago. Calipari's like, nobody's telling me how to move, when to move, where to move. It'll come in due time, and you're going to love the results. And look, how could you miss with Jonas Adu on Monday, Nelly Davis on Tuesday, basically 24-hour turnaround when we learned about, Davis, the top player in the portal, number one 6'4" guard out of Florida Atlantic. There's a little bit of nuance and complexity. I've been talking about that. We learned a little bit more over the last several days. I'm going to get into that here. But Jonas Adu, the 6'11" forward center, the first name, a top 10, top 15 player when you look at the various portal rankings. We know what he meant to Tennessee last year in that SEC regular season championship, a run to the Elite Eight. But Adu, we're talking about a guy that was all SEC, second team, all SEC, all defensive team. It's a big-time pickup. He had that visit last weekend, and it rolled into Monday with that commitment announcement pretty quickly. Let's not forget he had visited Baylor a week before, and everybody was talking about this guy's going to be a Baylor Bear and join Jeremy Rhodes, the Duke transfer. That didn't happen. John Calipari proves once again who's at the top when we talk recruiting, and that now we see bleeds over into the portal, not just the five-star high school one-and-dones that he does a great job and has already landed three of those kind of guys when we talk about Arkansas's previous commitments. But again, I look at Adu. Now you bookend him with Big Z on that front line. You could play both on the court together. You can alternate those guys, and I think it gives Arkansas a strong foundation on that front line to start with and build around. And we're going to talk about some of the other names that are out there as we move along. But then Nelly Davis, John L. Davis, 6'4" guard, Florida Atlantic. We know that he's got his name in the NBA draft pool. He was not invited, by the way, to the 78-player list of players that came out for the NBA draft combine list that came out. He was not among the players invited. I suspected he would be invited, however, to the elite camp names that comes out after the combine invites. The combine invites are all about players that are actually have the best chance of getting drafted. You've got 60 picks in the draft. They invited 78 players. So, there may be some sorting out as the combine plays out on some guys that solidify draft spots, some that may fade away. He was not invited to that, but the elite camp is 2 days prior to the combine and 44 players participating in that apparently this year. John L. Davis was invited to that. There is reporting out from Jonathan Genovi of ESPN Draft Express, their lead draft analyst, does a great job over there saying that Davis has indicated he has turned down that elite camp invite. Now, if you play in the elite camp, a handful of those players after 2 days are going to be invited to move into that draft combine that plays out later that week. So he misses an opportunity to do that if, in fact, he's declined to participate in elite camp. He did it a year ago this time. He went through that much of the process. The same reporting by Genovi says that Davis he will still do private interviews and maybe workouts with various NBA teams. Select was the word he used, select NBA teams. So if you think it's good news that wasn't invited to the combine, A, and B, that he's declined the elite camp invitation for the G League, the door is still cracked if he's going to be talking to NBA teams. He has till May 29th, Davis does. That's the deadline for all college eligible players to withdraw from the draft if they want to return and play college basketball. So keep an eye on that. That's several weeks out. This could play out for a while. We've heard rumors anywhere from $1 million to north of $1.5 million in terms of NIL dollars for him. Doesn't completely, the $1 million number, at least to me, is not way out of the realm of likelihood, simply because if you did go the G League elite camp, I mean, he's a G League player at minimum. He's probably got a great shot at getting a two-way deal if he stays in the pro option and can make upward of between $600,000 and $700,000 if he maxes that opportunity out. So you're probably going to have to put down some really good NIL money to get him to turn away from those kind of opportunities. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with these, what we're hearing now will be potential visits to NBA teams for private workouts, interviews, and those kind of things. So let's keep an eye on Nelly Davis. Otherwise, not only did he commit on Tuesday, but the university's already announced his signing, which means that financial aid agreement that he has signed has been certified by the NCAA, which means at some point you think he's going to enroll at Arkansas. Those things are not as binding as a signed national letter of intent that high school and JUCO players go through. I've talked about that before, but all indications are to me, based on the NIL figures I'm hearing, the fact that he's publicly announced that he's a Razorback, and that at least the paperwork's been done, that unless there's a pro option there, I think he remains a Razorback. And I think it's getting closer and closer to where the pro options are shrinking on him, especially when you start declining invitations for some of those platforms that help you build your possibilities there. So I've spent a lot of time on that, because fans seem to me on social media and over at hogville.net to still be a little confused about everything, because he has committed, and Arkansas is obviously counting him as one of the players for next year out of the portal. But the number one rated guy in the portal, the week really wasn't quiet after that, because Arkansas did have a midweek visitor, Jacob, that we need to talk about. But just putting a cap on Adu and Davis, arguably two of the top 10 portal guys out there. You 3 5-stars out of the high school class, half of Kentucky's committed class or signed class when Cal was there, and then Big Z. So you got 6 players with 7 more scholarships to fill.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. We've talked extensively throughout this process. There's been a lot of, I don't know if concern's the right word, but just, what's the balance going to be? We know he can get it done, 5 stars high school recruiting, new age of college basketball. You got to balance that with the portal. And not only are these guys high profile, but it's like you mentioned, they bring real experience. You talk about Adu, played in the Elite Eight this year. You talk about Davis, who played in the Final Four a year ago. These are guys, along with Big Z, along with the high school recruiting that is going to be there, that can make a difference, and it's encouraging to see the balance. But you mentioned the midweek visitor. Coach Cal's not sitting down. He's not stopping. He's keeping going. So what did you hear about Tiero visiting in the midweek, and what does Arkansas have to potentially look forward to in that department?
Well, so far Calipari had a really good track record. When we go through Jonas Adu and some of the other names I mentioned, he was 5 out of 5 out of guys that came to campus and committed to Arkansas. Then you had Brandon Garrison, who we didn't talk about. NIL money the stakes got raised there. Arkansas was out on that part of it. The value they had for him was not where it landed with Kentucky. Okay, so that one's understandable, especially since they plays the same position as Adu. Then it was Nelly Davis. We heard he'd had that visit to Arkansas. That was kept under the radar. So now you're talking about Adu Thero, who was on campus and didn't commit in the midweek. He's a guy that a lot of folks think maybe North Carolina's in play, but a big wing, 6'8", versatile, can defend 5 positions. Can defend. I mean, he's strong at 6'8". 2 good seasons under Calipari at Kentucky this last year. This past season, he averaged over 7 points, 5 rebounds. His shooting splits were fine. It's just a player that, when I watched him play, his activity, that athleticism, that length, that size, and that versatility as a 6'8" wing. So many schools he's coveted. You understand why it's down to blue bloods. Kentucky still thinking they might be a chance to get him to come back. North Carolina looking to land him, and then Calipari at Arkansas. I think getting him on campus says a lot, that he is definitely interested. The fact that he hasn't committed could mean multiple things. But we'll keep an eye on Adu Thero. But you mentioned the experience of guys out of the portal when you talked about Davis and Adu and the Elite Eight and the Final Four. But you also want to look for, maybe, is there some Kentucky continuity? You don't want to, he's not in a position to bring every player with him from Kentucky. Some of those guys are going to the NBA draft. 1 or 2 have already moved on to other places. But with Big Z off the board, Adu would be another piece where it helps you have some continuity with your system and your program. Players that already know expectations, have played for you, been through the wars with you, and it helps convey to other players you're bringing in. So you talk about experience in postseason, maybe some of that Kentucky experience when we talk about an Adu Thero, or potentially a DJ Wagner looking ahead. That's been really quiet on that front. But those are just a couple of names. Jordan Burks, we've talked a lot about. It's already been on campus, has been out to dinner with he and his family with Calipari several weeks ago. I really felt like he's a player that could be coming off the board, the freshman 6'8", 6'9" wing that was a freshman last season at Kentucky, sparingly used, but another guy that can have that defensive versatility and continue to progress and develop, and would help bring some of that Kentucky continuity again in terms of Calipari coming from Lexington to Fayetteville. So keep an eye on those names as well. And we need to talk about some other portal guys because Calipari had an interesting tweet that came out in the last 48 hours, and I think he's been kind of signaling some things when he does make some of these tweets.
Yeah, so going there, where you mentioned it, Arkansas has been doing great things in the portal and high school recruiting, and yet when you're rebuilding an entire roster, if you got 6 or 7 guys, it means you still got 6 spots to fill. So what are you hearing in terms of cryptic Calipari tweets and everything else? Where could Arkansas be looking potentially in the portal and elsewhere moving forward?
Well, Calipari doesn't tweet a lot, but when he does, some of them are very meaningful. And he's got, I'm not sure if he's the groomsman or if he's if he's in the, I don't know, or the best man. I don't
Yeah.
know what his role is, but he's talking about folks from Florida. So I'm assuming he's back in Florida for a wedding, I guess, over the weekend. But there are several players Arkansas's thought to be in the mix for. Norshad Omie, the 6'7" forward that spent his first two seasons as an Arkansas State Red Wolf, Sun Belt Player of the Year. He's averaged a double-double in each of the 4 seasons he played. He left Arkansas State, went to Miami in the ACC. Last season, averaged 17 and 10. I mean, he's a guy that can even step out off pop situations out high and knock down a three, 35% from three. And that's not really his game. His game is going to the glass hard, 3.5 offensive rebounds per game out of 10 rebounds per game. I mentioned the 17 points, a lot of putbacks, slashes to the basket. Just one of those blue-collar guys that, to me, looks great anywhere. He can fit in any kind of system because the way he plays, he doesn't command the ball. He goes and gets the ball and makes things happen. That's a different kind of animal. And you talk about a guy averaging a double-double all 4 seasons of college. He's got another COVID year. He's Miami. Miami, where's that? That's in Florida. Maybe Calipari was down there to see him. Kason Pryor, a 6'10" forward out of South Florida in the transfer portal. Arkansas has been tied to him, been kind of quiet in some regards. He put out the eyeballs emoji, I think, last night. Pryor did. Cal was down there. 13 points, 8 rebounds per game. Started 21 games last year. One of those bigs that can face the basket. There's a little bit of Grant Nelson swagger to him. Arkansas fans know who that is. Helped Alabama to the Final Four, but there's a little element there when you're talking the size. 6'10", can shoot the three, can put the ball on the floor relatively well, and beat other bigs off the bounce. So he's got some face-up game. He goes to that glass. I mentioned 8 rebounds per game. And I like his shooting splits as well, 35%, over 35% from three. And so here's a versatile guy, South Florida. Again, Calipari down in Florida. Who knows what it means? Wooga Poplar, a 6'5" guard, also with the Miami Hurricanes, teammates last year with Norshad Omir, and a guy that's a double-figure scorer, 14 points per game, just over 2 assists. Big 6'5" guard. Could also be someone maybe Arkansas reached out to him. Arkansas's, there's word on the street that maybe things are, Arkansas is moving closer into a finals list for him. So these are 3 guys that have those Florida ties based on where they played last season, and certainly John Calipari being down for a Florida wedding. I don't think that was the only thing on his menu of things to do down there. So we keep an eye on those things as we move forward. But you mentioned there's still 7 spots to fill up. Talked about the part of that bringing maybe some Kentucky guys. Things have slowed down a little bit. Adufeo did not commit, like we've seen the trend after that visit right away. Maybe he's still in the works there to commit. I mentioned Jordan Burks, DJ Wagner, but these names we just mentioned are 3 that Arkansas, I think, is prioritized. And you start looking at what the needs are. Really, I think it's a strong rebounding 4, someone versatile enough to anchor down at the 5 if needed. Probably another versatile wing, and we're talking to Duthero and Jordan Burks there. Those are just 2 names there. I think Poplar could do that. And then another lead guard. There's some options out there. Devian Smith from Utah, who Arkansas has contacted, started his career at Mississippi State. Big assist guy, over 7 per game last year. So he's a guy that can facilitate. But I think when you start talking about what are some of the other needs with 7 spots to go, those are some of them. And I think another 6'11", 7-footer would not be out of the question for Calipari to reel in another one of those guys for that front line somewhere, somehow, as we round it out.
Yeah, and you mentioned a little bit earlier, I wanted to quickly talk. We've got at least finally some official announcements on Cal's coaching staff, and I think it's a good segue in terms of, you mentioned Kentucky continuity, and Chin Coleman, Chuck Martin join his staff, both guys that obviously coached with him for a while and coached at Kentucky as well. That's another kind of aspect, right, of bringing along part of the Kentucky continuity. Doesn't all have to be players, or bring the coaching staff along as well, and that keeps kind of the momentum of the program that he had at Kentucky.
Well, when you recruit at the level that staff does, you don't need to change a whole lot or tweak a whole lot. I think what's interesting about it is we were reporting even before the day before Calipari, or I was announced formally as Arkansas's coach, that part of this deal coming in would be bringing as many as 6 staff members with him. And we're starting to see that. Kenny Payne, who coached with him for the longest, then went to Louisville for 2 seasons, now associate head coach. Chin Coleman also named as associate head coach of this release. So the Arkansas is going to have 2 of those. I confirmed it with the spokesman with the men's basketball program. Did something change with Payne? And he says, no, there's just 2 of them. There's going to be 2 associate head coaches. So Chin Coleman, you see a lot of Coleman in pictures with Calipari at various stops that he makes and places he goes, and some of the recruiting trail stuff. Not a shock there. Chuck Martin, again, another well-respected assistant coach now on board. I think we're going to hear some more from the Kentucky lineage formally announced, and we've got some Arkansas possibilities, and I bring up their names quite often. Obviously, Ronnie Burr Jr., we'll see what happens there. He was on the previous staff, has remained in some capacity in some of the transition stuff. We'll see what kind of role it shakes out for him, and I still hear the name Joe Johnson, the Hogs icon, future Naismith Hall of Famer, in some kind of a role or capacity is a real possibility. Not that it's necessarily a done deal, but a real possibility. So I still think we're still learning. You got almost half a roster, 6 on board, 7 to go. But Jacob, you also got some more staff positions to announce. So again, Calipari moves at his pace. And if you want to look at it from a guy that's already a Hall of Fame coach by a decade's measure, let's not say it's too slow. It's not too fast. It's just right. It's just right. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's been an important lesson for a lot of people, right? He just does it differently. And I think he's earned the right to be trusted in that regard, whether it's building a staff or building a team. He's going to do it his own way. And I think that's a good way to put it. Not too fast, not too slow, just right. But wrapping up, we're still smack dab in the middle of NBA postseason. I know you want to talk a little pro Hogs action. It was tough to watch. I'm a Pacers fan, so I was happy in a way to see the Pacers advance, but sad to see Patrick Beverley and Bobby Portis bow out. But still some other pro Hogs making an impact in the NBA playoffs. It's been fun to watch so far.
It has been, and I'll just say this about Portis. Finalist for 6th man of the year, again, one of the 3 finalists, back-to-back seasons. He didn't win it. He's been the best 6th man in the NBA span in the past 4 seasons. I don't know why they can't get that figured out or get it right. He was ejected from a game, a critical game in these playoffs early in the game, but in the other 5 out of the 6, he had a double-double in each game, and it was a massive producer with Giannis out and picking up that slack. So kudos to him. Patrick Beverley had also been in the starting lineup, had, I think, one game where he had a double-double when that Milwaukee won at home. But a 4-2 series win. But moving on, who's still left? Isaiah Joe and Jalen Williams with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And it's going to be hog-on-hog crime because Dan Gafford and the Dallas Mavericks, a little tougher series, a little tougher to deal with. 4-2 series win over the Clippers, the higher seed in a 4-5 matchup. The OKC is the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, disposed easily of the New Orleans Pelicans in 4 games, been off for a few days. But that series picks up on Tuesday, round 2, or the semifinals of the Western Conference playoffs. So Gafford and the Mavs against Isaiah Joe and Jalen Williams with Oklahoma City Thunder. You've still got Jordan Walsh and the Boston Celtics, the top seed. They seem to be moving about the cabin with ease, dispose of the Miami Heat are always trouble in the playoffs. Yeah. They're just a hard out. And granted, the Heat won game 2 in Boston. It was one up even. And then Boston basically blew out the next 3 games to win that one 4-1. Jordan Walsh, I don't think, has seen the court to this point. There was a couple of blowout wins and opportunity for him to get in. I don't know why they're not getting that rookie some playoff experience, even in mop-up time, but we'll see moving forward if he does. So you've got 4 pro Hogs there that are still in the mix. I might be leaving somebody out that's still going. I don't think so. Anthony Black did the Magic. I did not look at the scoreboard before I came on. I know they were trailing in the 4th quarter.
Here, let me check that for you. We'll do a live
I know
right now.
Yeah, we're live right now. But so Orlando needs to win Game 7 for Anthony Black
Cleveland
and the Magic.
Won 106-94.
Cleveland
did complete the comeback.
Okay, they were down by 18 points, and I knew they led by 8 going to the 4th quarter, and I got distracted with other things and forgot to check that before we came on. So I wasn't sure where that was leading. But so, okay, Anthony Black's gone fishing now. So we're down, we're down to four, I think, four pro hogs as we look at it moving forward. And that's outstanding. I mean, you still got
Yeah.
Razorback you can pay attention to as we get deeper now to these NBA playoffs.
Yeah, and we always sound like a broken record, but what's awesome, right, is playing real roles. You know, obviously Jordan Walsh is a rookie; he's in a bit of a different situation. But you talk about just two heavyweights in terms of the Mavericks and the Thunder going at it, and Gafford, Joe, and Williams are all going to play big roles in that series. It's going to be fun to watch them battle it out. I know a lot of eyes are going to be on Doncic and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, but it's going to be fun for Arkansas fans to watch those three battle it out too.
No doubt about it. And look, you talk about there's a lot of talk about the old guard players already out of the playoffs, right? But keep an eye on Kyrie Irving. This dude's unbeaten for Dallas. He's unbeaten in closeout games, 13-0. He's cooking better than he's cooking as well as anybody in the playoffs right now. The guy is still an unbelievable bucket getter. Unbelievable. His defense ratchets up in close game situations. One of the smartest players I've ever watched play, even though he thinks the earth is flat. His game's on time, Jacob. His game is on time. It's on point. And look, you know, I'm a Thunder fan. Now that Gafford's over there with the Mavs, I'm a Dallas fan. You know, Hog fans. So someone's going to the Western Conference Finals that represents the Razorbacks. But keep an eye on Kyrie Irving as that X factor because OKC's got all those young legs. They've got arguably the best player in the game right now in Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. One of the three finalists for the MVP race, by the way. And they got a lot of other really good players, Isaiah Joe and Jalen Williams in that top rotation. Dan Gafford, of course, starting for the Mavericks. So this is going to be an exciting series, maybe the best series as we move forward in this next round of matchups.
Yeah, should be a whole lot of fun to watch. But that's going to do it for this week's Hog Hoops Report. For Kevin McPherson, I'm Jacob Morris. We'll talk to you next week. More Pig Trail Show coming up on the other side of the break.